This is Yvette Carnell from BreakingBrown.com, from YourBlackWorld.net, and today I'm joined by Pascal Robert from Black Agenda Report, and we are just going to talk a little bit about the election, what Trump's nomination means for Black people, what it means for other people, what it means for Hillary Clinton, what it means for incarceration, what it means for the economy, and everything else. So, Pascal, I want to first thank you for talking to me, and I want to first ask you a sort of, a sort of open-ended question in the sense of what does it mean that first of all, what does it mean that we have that Donald Trump is now the Republican number officially? He's the assumed Republican nominee, and what does it mean that he is now running to the left of Hillary Clinton? I saw an article this morning that said that basically he was like, I'm okay with raising taxes on the rich. Like, what does that foretell? What does that foreshadow?
Well, thanks for having me on the program, Yvette. I think that the most important thing you got to understand about Donald Trump is that Donald Trump is doing nothing but demonstrating to the Republican Party what they have sold in itself over the last 50 years. Going back to Barry Goldwater, who was anti the Civil Rights Act, who was also a reactionary libertarian. Nixon ran under the Southern Strategy to try to break up the New Deal coalition, which again, the New Deal coalition were the whites who were beneficiaries of the New Deal under FDR, and the civil rights activists and the civil rights movement and African Americans came together to create a new Democratic Party. And what Nixon did is he used the Southern strategy basically to alienate the white working class and the white poor away from the Democratic Party using racial dog whistles, crime, so on and so forth, urban rebellions, the Black Panther Party, to basically use that to create an agenda to returning to law and order, the silent majority. Now, this type of politics has been used over and over again by the Republican Party, and even Clinton adopted it in '92 when he ran. And what Donald Trump represents is that basically the 50-year tradition of the Republican Party appealing to racial dog whistles and appealing to the fears of the white majority of this country has come home to roost after 8 years of a black president that, basically was a centrist Democrat who was a corporatist, who did not do much for the working class and poor of any class. Now, because of the frustration from the economic condition and political condition, and frankly, their racist reaction to the demographic reality that their numbers are shrinking, you have now the rise of a Donald Trump. So Donald Trump is a consummation. He is consummating. He is the creation of 50 years of what the Republican Party has been festering in its own house
But
basically come home to roost.
but let me give you some pushback on that, because here's one thing that I want to really hash out. Now, just in terms of, let's talk about his rhetoric while he was running for president, since he's been running in the primaries and everything. Now, I know he sent out a tweet, or he retweeted a tweet that had erroneous statistics about black on black crime. But other than that, in terms of black people in this country, um, has he really targeted black people with racist rhetoric?
Well, racist rhetoric, but you understand, racist rhetoric is not limited to black people. When you say that all Mexicans are rapists and criminals, that, you are still using racist rhetoric. But your question is that has Donald Trump, as a candidate, demonstrated particularly direct animus towards African Americans as a voting constituency? I think strategically he has not done that because he realizes that as such a relatively important voting bloc that would make him completely non-viable as a candidate. And second of all, I think that what Donald Trump is trying to do is trying to leverage the reality that Barack Obama has not been able to produce policy that has changed the economic reality for the large majority of the black community, and basically come out and say, like, you had your guy for 8 years. What condition is your community in? Come with Trump. At least I'm going to try to improve your economic situation. And because there's also a part of the black community that has a certain resentment towards the incoming of the Mexican labor force, who they argue are depreciating wages and competing for them with jobs, Trump's anti-Mexican, anti-immigrant rhetoric sadly appeals to a segment of the African-American community. Trump, being wiser than half than most people realize, understands that if he can peel away 9 or 10% of the black vote, understanding that Bush got 8% in 2004, he can actually fracture some of that Hillary Clinton coalition that she needs to win in certain key states. So I would agree with you that Trump has not made overtly racially antagonistic statements towards African Americans. But to answer your earlier question, is that what has created Donald Trump is that Donald Trump is basically a product of the political posturing the Republican Party has taken over 50 years in using white angst and fear as a means to securing 60 to 65% of the white vote consistently. And the first time that has not borne fruit for them in a positive way was really with the election of Barack Obama, who created a new kind of coalition between blacks, Latinos, white liberals, and white progressives that neutralized that in 2 elections. So what Donald Trump is basically trying to do is to see if he can leverage that by causing a fracture in that Democratic coalition.
Well, and I've been talking to a lot of people, and listen, I'm thinking about this and I'm mulling it over in my own mind. This idea that we're all just people of color, right? That's who we are. Like all brown people, whether you're Iranian, whether you're African American, whether you're Ghanaian, whether you're Haitian, whether you're Mexican American, whether no matter where you come from, you're just kind of bunched into this people of color category. So, shouldn't there be some discussion about whether or not we're all people of color, in the sense that, businesses do use illegal immigration to drive down wages that do impact black people who are typically at the bottom of the rung in terms of capitalism in America. And so my question to you is, what do you say to people who say that, listen, we are kind of down here, we are competing with immigrants, and businesses sort of using immigration to undercut us economically, in the sense that, no revolution is likely, given where we are right now coming. Like, how do you now improve the plight of African Americans and black people in this country economically?
Well, first of all, I definitely agree that because of the nature of the way capitalism functions in the United States, that the business sector, the private sector, will always try to create a friction between laborers. This goes back to the early 20th century, when black people were used as strike breakers, during the union movement in the early 20th century as well. And it caused a kind of reactionary antagonism towards the white working class in the way blacks were used at that time. So now what you find that Mexicans and Latinos are coming in, are now basically taking wages and maybe depreciating, because that's the way that capitalism uses them. So what the question we have to ask now is that, does it make sense for African Americans who come from a political and social tradition of fighting the oppression of the economic order, siding with the most reactionary faction of American capitalism, to alienate people who are coming to the United States for economic opportunity because of the way capitalism has affected them at home? So black people are victims of capitalism in the United States. Mexicans are victims of capitalism at home, but because we are basically saying that they are competing with us for jobs, we're going to side with reactionary racists against them, to see that if we're going to be in a better position with the reactionary racists against the Mexican. I think, number one, strategically, I wouldn't consider that the best option, because just because that reactionary racist is considering that Mexican the enemy today, how do you know he's not going to consider you the enemy tomorrow for any other variety of reasons? Number two, I think is to find a way to challenge the economic order that demands that that Mexican worker, gets such low wages and drives their wages down in the first place. Now, I understand that takes much more political creativity, it takes much more strategy, and it's a lot easier to say those Mexicans are taking my jobs at the construction site and they're driving down my wages. But I would like to know, how exactly is it that you are a community that has been the most victimized by economic order, and now in order to basically compete with those who are being as victimized like yourself, you're going to side with the reactionary faction of this country that has always worked against you, because you basically are worried about your position now? I mean, is it unviable as a logical tool? I think it makes sense, but in terms of a long-term strategy, is that really where you want to sit yourself as a community, basically working with the right-wing reactionaries against people of color, or Mexicans or Latinos? I don't particularly see that as a wise strategy down the line. And your response will be, well, when are these other communities of color going to stand up for the issues of African Americans? That's a valid point, and that's a valid criticism, and I think that criticism should be made. But I think that as the community that has done most, in my opinion, to try to change the status quo in America to be more open to people, I think it would be a disgrace to our legacy of those who fight what the system is about, to now befriend the elements that are most antagonistic to the whole century-long tradition of what black people have been fighting for, because we are basically trying to compete for scraps from the status quo table.
Well,
I don't see that
well,
as a good look.
well, I don't know. I don't know if it's a good look, but just in terms of what it is, like a lot of what you said resonates to me in a certain way, in the sense that it's a disgrace. Like it's in terms of where we have been morally, but that's a moral argument as opposed to an economic argument. I think there are black people who are making an argument. I'm not, and I don't think I wouldn't discount it as an invalid argument that it may be time for black people to pivot to an economic sort of consideration of their own positionality as opposed to a moral posture.
I advocate. My politics on this. I believe that the problem that we have as collectively as black people is that we root our politics in racism, and race relations, as opposed to political economy. I totally agree with that. I think that what we should do is root our position as a community relative to how black people relate to capitalism in America, not how black people relate to white people in America. So I agree with that completely. What I'm saying is that in the calculation of challenging the economic order, this assumes that you believe that the agenda of black people should be to challenge the economic order. Based on your analysis, here's the question. Is the agenda of black people to challenge the economic order, or capitulate to its divisive demands for to be a pound foolish and penny wise? In other words, we're going to get scraps now, but we're going to capitulate to a system that tomorrow could make us the brown person who's on the out, depending on what the economic system says. Or we're going to try to form correlations with people to challenge. For example, Fight for 15 is a perfect example. $15 an hour minimum wage. That's going to benefit a lot of black people. It's going to benefit a lot of brown people. If we can create coalitions of working class people, regardless of race, who are changing the ability of workers to even pay Mexicans a lower wage, or even prefer them, would that not be a more effective way to leverage our position than basically capitulating to those right-wing reactionary forces that tomorrow can see black workers as the enemy? Or tomorrow can say, you know what, we're going to gentrify this city because we don't want to deal with these black workers because they have too much of a high rate of crime, and we're going to move out to another town. So why exactly are we setting ourselves in a situation to be siding with those forces when we can create coalitions to challenge the order in a way that's more economically democratic for more of us? I understand that you can say that it sounds good and that's lofty rhetoric. I got to pay my bills tomorrow. That's okay. Go ahead, fine. If you're saying that you want to vote for Trump, and I'm not one of those people who says black people should never vote for Trump. I'm saying vote what your economic interests are. But if you are a black laborer who works in a union who thinks voting for a hotel magnate who has never demonstrated too much interest in union employees before is your salvation in the face of a Hillary Clinton campaign, then you do that. I'm not a Hillary Clinton advocate either, because it was the Clintons who signed NAFTA. It was Obama who signed TPP. They have been the enemy of the working class for over 25 years. What I'm saying is that we are in a position right now politically where I don't see any allies, I don't see any friends. But the question is, how do you strategically leverage your position or your vote if you think you can collectively do so to get the best bang for your political buck?
Okay, fair enough. You said something to me that I thought was very important. Nobody predicted Trump to be the nominee. I hear you have pundits and ordinary people on my Facebook and elsewhere who on Twitter everywhere was like, he's never going to be the nominee. Now he's the nominee. But you gave me a few days ago a really good explanation of why you thought, based on the Electoral College numbers and in terms of the African American vote that Republicans need and the Latino vote that Republicans need to win, that it's almost impossible now for Trump to become president. I want you to kind of break down those numbers a little bit for me, and then I want to pivot to whether or not the Trump candidacy was born in the mind of Bill Clinton. So just break down that for me for just 1 second.
Okay, well, first of all, if you look in terms of demographic realities, in terms of what Republicans have needed to win, Republicans have needed traditionally in the last probably 4 to 5 election cycles between 25 to 29% of the Latino vote to win general elections. George W. Bush got 40% of the Latino vote in 2004. He got 8% of the African American vote in 2004, and that barely took him over the top. Understanding that Mitt Romney got 24% of the Latino vote in 2012 and still lost. When Donald Trump is basically running a campaign that is premised on alienating Latinos and Mexicans in the Latino community, it is logically speaking that Donald Trump will get less than 24-25% of the Latino vote. If that happens, his ability to work, particularly in states like Florida, Colorado, New Mexico, even Virginia, we have some Latinos, becomes impossible. Okay, so that's one thing. Also, understand that Hillary Clinton's strategy is to pivot to the right to appeal to disaffected Republicans who are unhappy with Trump's candidacy. Realize that for Republicans to win, they have to get usually between 63 and 66% of the white vote. Trump is already alienating large segments, parts of what I call Rockefeller Republicans, the traditional old guard kind of WASP Republicans, or the Southern Republican gentry, who is, racist light, if you will. So if Hillary can peel away about 12 or 13% of that, particularly Republican women, that puts Trump's ability to get that 63 to 65% of white voters in jeopardy as well. So now he's losing on the Latino front, and because of his rhetoric, he's also putting himself in jeopardy because of the white Republican women front and the white Rockefeller Republican front. So that's something that he has to consider. On the Electoral College map, we have to realize there's only about 6 to 9 states that are really important in deciding the presidency. If you go to a website called 270towin.com, www.270towin.com, it sets up the 2016 electoral map and allows you to flip states from blue to red. And based on the calculation, you can see who can get the 270 to win. Based on the 2012 election results, even if Donald Trump won Virginia, Ohio, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Indiana, Hillary Clinton, Florida, New Mexico, and Colorado, and the rest of the blue states, he would still lose the election. Mm-hmm. In other words, what Donald Trump needs to do to win this election electorally, he has to almost guarantee he wins Florida. How you do that in an electoral environment that is largely Latino. Even the conservative Latinos who are going to be more friendly to the Marco Rubio contingent are not too big fans of Trump. You have a large Jewish population in Florida that's going to be probably much more Democrat. It's more in line with Hillary. So how does Trump pull off Florida? It's almost impossible for him to win without Florida. Even if he wins Virginia, even if he wins North Carolina, even if he wins Ohio, even if he wins Wisconsin, Indiana, he still loses. So what that means is that Trump has to flip a major blue state. I think the best major blue state he can flip is maybe Michigan. Why? Because Michigan went for Bernie Sanders. Michigan also has a lot of resentment towards the Clintons because of their NAFTA vote, which gutted hundreds of thousands of jobs in Michigan as well. But also you got to remember Michigan has a large Muslim population that was a factor in the primary as well. So what I'm saying is that the reason why the demographics of the electoral map are difficult for Trump is that it's more than simply Trump firing up the reactionary white base. That's going to be no more than 60 to 65, even 70% of the population. We choose presidents by the Electoral College map. What state is Trump going to flip? He can't flip Colorado. He can't flip New Mexico. Mm-hmm. There's a large Latino population there. Nevada might go blue. Why? Because there's a large Latino population there. You already have John McCain talking about because there are 30% of the electoral voters in Arizona are Latino. Trump on the head of the ballot puts John McCain's reelection in trouble. What if Arizona, because the Latino vote, flips blue as a result of the combination of disaffected Republicans because of Trump and the Latino surge? There's already demographic data to show electorally that Latinos are over-registering right now based on the past because of Trump. So what I'm saying is that, am I saying it's impossible for Trump to win? Nothing is impossible. What I'm saying is that the Electoral College map makes it very perilous for any Republican to win in this new demographic reality. Demographics are destiny. And the growth population in this country electorally are Latinos. Don't forget, every year or every 7 years, there are hundreds of thousands of Mexicans and Latinos that are becoming citizens and adding to the voting roll, while the African-American population is actually decreasing in population. We talked about this the other day, how African American women have the lowest rate of population growth of any ethnic demographic in this country. This notion that black people are busting at the seams with all these welfare babies born out of wedlock is actually not the case. Black people are actually depopulating in this country. And in comparison to the Latino population, who is definitely growing in a larger segment, the political significance of black people is really going to be tested in this election if Trump is able to make a coalition that, if Hillary, for example, if Trump is able to make a coalition with all those votes, or what if Hillary Clinton is able to win, hypothetically, without the increase in black vote that Obama had in 2012 because she depends on Republicans. In other words, if the Bernie or bust movement works, right, and those Bernie people sit home, and let's say black people don't have the voter turnout that they had. They came out at 65% for Obama in 2012 and 2008. And most black people, as usual, under 50% voter turnout. Right? They largely stay home. Even if Hillary gets a significant number of the black vote, let's say she gets 70% of the black vote, but because it's depressed, that's still a lower number. What happens if Hillary Clinton, because of her strategy of pivoting to the right, picks up enough disaffected Trump voters, white women, Latinos who are coming out for her because of Trump, to win without blacks, without progressives? What happens to all those black people who've been supporting Hillary Clinton all those years? They become politically unimportant to her. And if you look at the fact that her political rhetoric is already moving to the right, all these black folk who basically got on the Hillary Clinton bandwagon without demanding anything from her, I believe that they're going to be strategically, ass out, excuse the language, once the
look, I think I think we'll leave it there. I appreciate that, because I appreciate you breaking down Latino numbers. I think we should do another video and break down how Hillary Clinton's campaign is going to basically leave black people out in terms of her running an issueless campaign. So I think we should save that one for our next video, or for another video. So I want to thank you, Pascal, for coming on. And I appreciate it, and I hope that this sort of gives black people something to think about in terms of the upcoming election.